This is GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW flyers, that is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 433, entitled Sage Women's Understanding of Masculist Arguments, but not of masculist rage. This is part 2, so continuing straight on. If a woman did not like some characteristic in a man, then she simply refused to allow him to ejaculate in her to get her pregnant. Thus, women have always had a monopoly over reproduction, which implies that any characteristic that men have had to be filtered through the female sexual selection process. This makes the idea of the feminists of toxic masculinity rather irrational, given that women were largely the cause of it. That is, women sexually selected men who were tall, big, strong, violent and fierce, who made such effective warriors against enemy warriors in times of intertribal warfare. This idea has many implications. Men are smarter than women on average by 4 IQ points, so the feminists' constant harping on the need to smash the patriarchy is a futile exercise, since it was largely women themselves who largely created the patriarchy, that is, male dominance of intelligence and power, since smarter men inevitably rise to prominence and power. Women simply can't compete with men at the top end of the performance scale. Women are not only dumber than men, but have a 10% lower IQ variance than men, so that the morons and the genii are males, so that women have won a pathetic 1% of science Nobel Prizes and nearly all the major math prizes, in brackets, Fields Medal, the Abel Prize. Women's sexual preference for fierce males resulted in men having 10 times higher testosterone levels in their blood. So men are much more aggressive than women, more ambitious, more dogged, more persistent than women, so achieve hugely more than women, dominating the entries in the Who's Who books, which contain the bios of famous people, the great men, with very few great women. Women are sexual cowards who on the whole don't dare take an upfront approach to seducing a man. That is, they don't just walk up to a man they really fancy and proposition him with, quote, "I am strongly sexually attracted to you, so let's fuck." This kind of blatant sexual proposition is very uncommon amongst women, since it was probably very risky in the distant past. If it did exist in the distant past, then it would mean that ugly, fat, unfuckable women would be hitting on alpha males, that is, tall, strong, handsome, fit, healthy, good hunter males, who would be annoyed by such female sexual attention, perhaps even obsessive attention coming from inferior, much less attractive females. And in the limit, if the inferior females strongly persisted in their sexual advances, could even be killed by him. So women use indirect means to attract men's attention, to make eye contact by using tricks that attract men's glance. For example, trinkets, fake up, jewelry, knickknacks, etc., false eyelashes, anything out of the ordinary to attract a man's attention, so that the two of them can establish eye contact that might lead to something more substantial, perhaps even to the man's sperm ejaculating in her that she really wants. The above reasoning implies that women are afraid of men's anger, that it is deeply evolved in women and is written into the very DNA of women. So when women, such as my girlfriend, is confronted with real masculinist anger and hatred at certain categories of women, she feels an instinctive, deeply rooted fear and threat that she does not want to have to come to terms with. For example, It's my experience, and it's something that has happened to me several times, to the extent that I'm now very conscious of and watch very closely the eyes of a woman to whom I say that I'm a masculist. I'm watching for the split-second fear reaction that flashes over her eyes as she takes in just what the term masculist means to her when she hears the term for the first time in her life. I suspect the fear reaction follows from a logical chain of reasoning that is made in a fraction of a second that A. Masculism is the obvious male equivalent of the word feminism. B. Feminists are angry at men. C. So masculists are angry at women. D. Angry men are to be feared by women, since in the distant past women learned to fear very angry men who could kill them. Therefore, masculists are angry men who might kill women, that is, this woman, the one he is talking to. Hence the unconscious flash of fear that passes over the eyes of women hearing the term masculist for the first time in their lives. To men reading this, try this experiment for yourselves. Tell a woman that you're a masculist and watch for the split-second fear reaction flash over her eyes. I've seen it enough times that I consciously look for it now. It is an interesting and I suspect unconscious reaction on the part of women. I've seen similar reactions with Mormons in the state of Utah, where I was once a university professor. Sometimes I would say to them that I was not a religionist and see that same flash of fear pass over their eyes. I wonder what was going on in their unconscious minds. Was I perceived to be a threat to their beliefs? If they thought that I thought that their religious beliefs were childishly gullible, then maybe they would think that perhaps they are. And that would imply that their beliefs that they so obviously strongly hold, that are the psychological core of their existence, then having those core beliefs ridiculed would be profoundly threatening to them, leading to cognitive dissonance and hence extremely uncomfortable, like going up to a priest and saying, "Mr. Priest, there's no God. You've wasted your whole life." Another possible reason why my girlfriend might feel fear at my masculinist anger and hatred at fluffy manslavers and at fluffy feminist hypocrites is that she too might be feeling some cognitive dissonance, since she has only very recently been exposed to masculist ideas and masculist rhetoric. For the past half-century of her life, she has absorbed, as have millions of other women, the idea that gender oppression is a one-way street, that it's only men who are the gender oppressors, and it's only women who are the victims of gender oppression. So to be suddenly confronted with a masculist who tells her that women oppress men far worse than vice versa, in brackets, since women oppress men continuously and for decades, with their fluffy manslavery, their awful financial parasitism, their fluffy feminist hypocrisy in the divorce courts, their many decades-lasting gender crimes against men, for example, paternity fraud, their pill lying, causing men to pay for decades for a kid that he does not want, since the law forces him to pay, even though the woman lied to him that she was taking the pill, but wasn't, got pregnant, then forced him to take paternity responsibility due to the fact that men don't have the para, close brackets, runs totally contrary to what the feminists have been preaching to her for most of her life, hence her possible feminist cognitive dissonance. The para will force women to grow up, to fip up, to take responsibility for their own lives, instead of blaming men for many of women's problems, as most feminists do. Fipping up is terrifying for fluffies, since they will be forced to abandon their desire to behave as children, expecting some white knight, some prince charming, to save them from financial poverty, so that they will not have to take responsibility for their own financial upkeep. Millions of women are fluffies at heart and are quite content to expect that some gullible, stupid, ignorant manslave will save her and work for her for decades. Masculism is in that sense terrifying for fluffies in its implied very real threat that women would be forced to fip up, to behave as adults, as millions of men realise that women now have a career window of half a century, so must work. Anything else is manslavery, which will eventually get women killed as men take an ever increasingly murderous and hateful attitude towards fluffy manslavery, thinking that manslavery is slavery, and since slavery is hated, so masculists will have a hatred for fluffy manslavery, and in the limit will kill fluffies, because manslavery to masculists, who see themselves as abolitionists, see manslavery as a war issue, hence will eventually go to war against the fluffies, killing them. Just as the abolitionists of the northern states of the US in the 1800s saw Negro slavery as a moral abomination worth having a war over to get rid of it, so too do masculists in the 21st century see manslavery as a moral abomination and will eventually go to war against the fluffies and fluffy feminists, killing them to get rid of it. To masculists, this historical analogy is compelling and very real. Its logic is hard to deny, even by the most rabid of monoconscious feminazi bigots. To masculists, fluffydom is to be wiped out by forcing women to become fips or to rot on the shelf, severely punished by men by not getting one. At least not a quality man whom women strongly want to mate with to get his superior DNA for her kid, a female instinct that all women evolved to have, called hypergamy, that is, the instinct of a woman to mate up. Masculism will prove to be as historically profound a social and political change as was feminism, which in only a mere half-century has deeply changed society as millions, billions of women have taken up the traditional male lifestyle of being careerists. Female careerism allows men to reject decades-long manslavery in his life, working for women, since women can now earn their own money for most of their lives, for example, during the half-century career window that women have in advanced rich countries. ... Just which of the above reasons for women's fear of masculine anger and hatred is the correct one, or perhaps a combination of some or all of them, is still not clear to me. I will keep asking my girlfriend and other women to whom I tell that I'm a masculist just why they feel such an instinctive fear and loathing of masculine anger and hatred. I do remember one time my girlfriend said to me that masculine hatred was insulting to women. That really got on my nerves, so I said to her, quote, "Of course it's insulting. In fact, it's much stronger than that, since we masculists aim to exterminate fluffies and fluffy feminists by forcing them to convert themselves into becoming bi-conscious fips, or be severely punished by being forced to rot on the shelf, punished by men by not getting one." End quote. I reprimanded her that she still has a rather monoconscious attitude that, end quote, "It's okay for women, for feminists, to lash out at men for the ways that men oppress women, but it's not okay for men, for masculists, to lash out at women for the ways that women oppress men." That attitude of monoconscious feminists is despised by masculists for its sexist hypocrisy, its attitude that what is good for the goose is not good for the gander. I think she absorbed the logic of that criticism of mine, since she's not stupid. If she were, she would not be my girlfriend, since my top criterion in any potential girlfriend is her intelligence. In fact, I get rather impatient with the strong emphasis of the MGTOWs when they talk endlessly about the SMV, that's sexual marketplace value, of women and men, when for me, my top criterion is a woman's intelligence. Research shows that if the IQ gap in a couple is more than 5 IQ points, then the relationship usually fails, since a couple is highly sensitive to IQ difference. People of either sex get quickly bored by people who cannot keep up intellectually with them, so prefer to be with people of a comparable intellectual level. Hence, my 3 main criteria for selecting a potential girlfriend was that she be a nurturative, FIP, sage. As a male, I want the nurturing from a female that I got from my mother as a small boy. As a masculist, I want my girlfriend to be a FIP, so that I'm not a manslave to her. And as a sage myself, that is, an intellectual, a thinker, a player with ideas, usually with a PhD, a writer with an IQ in the top percentile, close brackets, I want my girlfriend also to be a sage with an IQ within the 5 IQ points difference range, so that one of us does not see the other as dumber, and hence as unattractive and boring. Because my girlfriend is a sage, I expect her to understand masculist ideas quickly, which she does. She could easily pass the masculist speech test, that is, the challenge to talk for 2 minutes on the main ideas of the masculist movement. But I'm still puzzled why she seems unable to translate that intellectual understanding of the main masculist ideas into an intuitive, emotional understanding of why male masculists have such an anger and hatred for fluffy manslavers and fluffy feminist hypocrites. Maybe it's just a female genetic inferiority that is never going away. Maybe it's built into women's DNA to fear male anger and hatred, especially towards certain categories of women. My puzzlement on this score has not yet abated, and I'm not sure it ever will. I will keep you posted.